Good morning, folks. Morning, Christian.
Morning, everyone.
I meant to wave, not a clap. I always think that's a waving hand when I look at it in the menu and then find out it's not when it
I
moves.
know it's it's bizarre the way it works. It's a little bit, yeah, a little bit funky there. All right. Let the room fill up here, and I will share my screen to prepare us to get going. All right, it should be. Okay. It's going. The chat. All right, let's give it just a minute for room to fill out. All righty, we're getting a good crowd here. All right, we've clicked over to 3 after, and we have a lot to cover today. So let's go ahead and get going. Welcome everyone to the January 14th meeting of the Decentralized Trust Group, Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group. And as always, the first thing we do is share our antitrust policy notice here. We are a Joint Development Foundation branch of the Linux Foundation. And so we ask everyone to observe their antitrust policies. And if you, and we are a joint working group of Trust European Diff. So if you're a member of either one, you are welcome to contribute fully. If you're not a member of one or the other, you're welcome to be here, but don't make any substantial contributions so we don't get into any IPR hot water. What happens when trust meets antitrust? Yeah, well, we're living it here at Trust Over IP. So right from the start. Um, all right. And the first thing we always do is check in to see if there are any new members, and if so, whether they would like to make any introduction. We also have so feel to put up your hand if you'd like to do that directly. We also have a feature we've started here called the member bio page. So if you want to share any information about yourself with the rest of the group, you can do it in this Google Doc. And I just put a link in there. And also before I start editing the notes, this is our meeting notes page we'll be working from today. It has links. There it is. It has links to all the things we'll be discussing. So we'll try and put links in the chat as we go. But if you miss one, if you can link into that, and you're welcome also to add any notes directly to the page because you can actually have multiple editors on this Confluence wiki. All right. I'm just looking over, are there any new introductions? It looks like we've been meeting long enough. I think we've got a full house of folks that are veterans now. Okay. So, quick review of the agenda before we dive in. Have a report from Risk and Assessment Harms Task Force. Nikki got a note that she can't be here this morning. Um, oh, great, Joe. Glad you've joined up for the foundation. And then I think the majority of our time will then be spent on the new VO3 uh, schema credential definition proposal that Brendan and Jeff will be going over with us. In fact, I'll copy that into the chat right now in case anyone wants to look that in advance. And finally, if we have time this week, we'll get to what are our, let's have a discussion of our objectives for Q1 for this working group because things are moving fast. So, okay, before we dive in, any revisions or additions to the agenda? If not, last thing we'll check on here is first action items. One of them was add the objectives to this call, which I've already done. And Scott, we had our call yesterday, but I forgot we were going to discuss a repo for risk assessment of harms task force. Is that something we're uh, still want to keep on the agenda?
Well, I think it depends on how the deliverables are going to be delivered. So we have a GitHub repo. They have to be compatible with GitHub, and right now we have Excel spreadsheets, which are difficult to put on GitHub right now. So I guess the question really, as opposed to dictating it to others, is let's have a conversation around where we're at with risk assessment and see if a repo would be needed. I thought we had a Google Drive set up for that, and that's at least a repo. It's not like
Yeah.
we don't have it.
Well, yeah, it's not an urgent thing. I can't even remember why exactly it came up. It might have been because so there's a separate discussion space because the
Right,
repo comes with
from
the
using issues and all those things, which is I think a useful
yeah.
function.
Okay, we can follow up on setting that up. The nice thing is LFDT makes that easy for us now.
Right.
Okay,
At minimum, we
yeah,
also have Discord. So please, if you have questions and
absolutely,
issues, put it in the Discord. Okay.
absolutely. Yes, and if you're not on our Discord channel, we can get you an invite. Uh, I won't do it right now, but anyone who is on the Discord can hit the invite button and stick that in the chat. Okay, before we dive in, are there any announcements of general interest to the group? I will actually repeat the one from last week and put this in the chat that this conference, which was going to feature all the things around our work, is on for February 23rd. It is invite only, but it's just a matter of applying to attend. It's the day before the Linux Foundation Member Summit, and the program I'll show you because I was just talking to the folks putting it on the H2H team yesterday. Program's really heating up. Jim Zemlin's going to give the keynote, talking about why Linux Foundation needs to use first person credentials, personal credentials, and the new web of trust we're building for them. Wendy Seltzer, Sheila Warren are going to talk about, digital rights online for people. Highlight a couple more things. Tricia Wang from Advanced AI Society is going to be making announcement of a major initiative they're doing called Proof of Control, which fits our stuff. And then Clay Shirky. Well, Doc, I missed. Where's the lunch? Clay Shirky. I guess he's not. Oh, there it is, right there. Powering Humans in the Age, Clay Shirky. If you know Clay, this is going to be, worth the price of admission right there. And then Doc Searle's going to give a talk on the attention economy, actually finally making real. So just a brief pitch for that. If you're interested, again, I put the link in the schedule. Any other announcements from anyone?
Um, yeah, Drummond,
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Riza.
the Southern California Linux Expo. It's their 23rd year. They run at the Pasadena Convention Center, and that's in LA. So come along. Quai programs the AI track for them and has done for the last couple of years. We're going to do it this year, and we have our very own Drummond Reed will be a speaker there. The headliners are Ben Goertzel, the guy who coined the phrase AGI. So that's late breaking news. He just agreed to talk in our AI track, and then we've got the CTO of Mozilla, Rafi Krikorian. He's a new incoming CTO, and so he wants to make make a move, and so we might also be able to get Mozilla and the Linux Foundation and in fact this working group to work more closely together as a result. So it's going to be an important conference. Hope to see you all there.
Cool. Do you have the dates on that?
Yeah, March 5th through 8th.
5 to 8.
And but the big event is on the 5th. I mean, the
Okay,
rest of the days are kind of expo days.
got it. All right. Excellent. Any other announcements? If so, just put your hand up or you can put something in the chat. But if not, let's dive in. Scott, I think go ahead because Nikki was not able to make it this morning with risk assessment harms.
Yeah. So I get to say all kinds of things, there you go. So one of the things that we've been, obviously we came in and we were taking some time of this particular meeting because risk is, the consideration of risk drives specifications and governance actions to be taken. Um, and we got a starter set of typical risks associated with this industry, verifiable credentials and ecosystems and such. Um, a lot of you are very excited and are chomping at the bit to get into specifications. So I think that, we've been discussing how best at the end of the day, we just need to document the risks that we are trying to address within the ecosystem to, mitigate the risk to an acceptable level. So, there's multiple ways to get where we're going. And so we were looking at pivoting and allowing specification groups to task forces to form and to start writing specifications. I would like to see that the specifications address risk. So you can identify the risks while you're developing the specifications. Now, Drummond would say, well, not every specification addresses a risk. I would challenge that. I'm a risk guy. So in addition, we would like to see if you're developing specifications, address, start off with what are the risks you're trying to mitigate with this specification? Because obviously you wouldn't, a lot of reasons you wouldn't have a specification. The specification is you're asking collective members of an ecosystem to follow consistently. So you're looking at a shared output that adds trust to an ecosystem. And so let's let's go that way. And that has worked in the past. People are very familiar with what should be put in from a specification standpoint. They don't always look at risk in a certain way. So I'll beg, borrow, and steal for a risk here and there. As long as we can demonstrate to the outside world that we have considered risk and we've considered what the ecosystem that we're trying to build here can mitigate risk to a reasonable degree, Or even if we don't, what is the residual risk that would occur? We can't solve all the problems. So these are the types of things that we are seeking out of the individual specification task forces, just a piece, but it actually, so I'm branching out to all. I'm going to be, I'm going to be omnipotent like Drummond always is. And I want to be in every specifications group with our risk assessment piece.
Excellent. Um, does anyone have any questions? Again, you can sort of see the progress that's being made. And there's several really excellent discussions going on relative to risk assessment, harms prevention in the concept and terminology. Excuse me, in the um, credentials task force. And this one here is I'm just going to bring it up and highlight it because between Scott and Sankarshan and uh, Nikki, yeah, it's I feel like that's what you're saying, Scott, is there's going to be in addition to sort of core risk assessment harms task force and its ultimate deliverables, there's this dialogue with every spec effort we're going to have, right?
Right.
And it's going to be, okay, what are, and I want to modify on the meeting yesterday, I was saying, the depending on the spec, it may not be that its core thing is addressing. It may be, okay, we're specifying to produce certain benefits of certain kinds for certain audiences. Scott's point was there will always be risks, and I do agree with him. And then he pointed out in our case, the reason for decentralized trust graphs at all is to mitigate the risk of, frankly, bad actors of any kind in any situation. So that's why we, was the first task force we started. So, all right, Scott, anything else to bring up? Or we're on to
Nope.
the, okay,
Yeah,
good, because
I defer because I know you have a lot of meaty topics.
they're all meaty, very good. All right, let's move into the media topic of the day, and this is going to be Brendan and Jeff. And Brendan and Jeff, I want to do you want to share directly and do a walkthrough of VO3 to sort of set up a discussion around that? I'll provide just this high-level background in case anyone was not here last week. We discussed these two new docs. I'll put them in the glossary. Uh, there's a link to that one and the VTC bootstrapping documents. VTC, there we are. They're both in the link there. So, which were really ways of really refining the terms and then testing our, do we have the credentials needed to basically build a verifiable trust community, to bootstrap it right from scratch. There's a brand new group of any kind, anywhere, although our target for that particular document, and which we put right up front, is the actual real work going on to build a specific model of a trust community, which is a web of trust model, which is what is used by the Linux kernel maintainers today. And they are, again, if you're new at all, they currently have a GPG web of trust. You can look that up on Wikipedia. Using GPG as the GNU version of PGP. So we're talking, now 30-year-old public-private key type of cryptography, where every two maintainers, every new addition to the Web of Trust has to have their keys signed by two other maintainers. And so rotating keys is really hard. It's a very manual process. There are just a bunch of questions around it. And when they were faced with the option of, oh, you could move to first person credentials, which is a personhood instance of what we're doing with DTG, they were very interested. And so this project's been ongoing. Jeff's been leading it on behalf of the First Person Project. Thank you. And so this is not theoretic. They are building it as we speak. This is what's helping drive this. And their particular model is a Web of Trust model. So we said, okay, let's write up in detail how they're going to do that. And it took us over to realize, oh, we hadn't addressed how do you invite folks into it. So we have invitation credentials now. Anyway, that's the background of this is what happened over the holidays. We reviewed those last week. Excellent comments, by the way. Thank you, everyone, for doing that. That's the process we need to go through. And then Brendan volunteered to author okay, what does that mean now for the credential schema proposal? And Brendan, if you're ready to share, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen here. Okay. All right. You should be seeing the GitHub repo for this project for the credentials. And Jeff this morning merged it to the main branch. Some of you might have been confused looking at the main branch because it was an older version. So now we're up to date with the latest version on the main branch. So you can find it there. And the hope is for those of you who have been participating in these meetings that this stuff we're discussing today feels very obvious and natural based on the previous version of the credentials that you've seen and the bootstrapping process and glossary that Drummond went over. So the glossary helps a lot to simplify the spec document because we can refer to that. And the bootstrapping process gives us the clarity on some more of the credential uses that we need. So I'll just dive right into it. Most of it's in one file here. And again, if you give me a couple minutes just to give a quick orientation, then I'm happy to be interrupted if there's specific issues. And I will leave some time, maybe after my kind of intro notes, Jeff, if you want to add something as well. I know your review, things are moving quickly. He had a chance to review some things in here and provide some comments that I haven't had a chance to review yet. So I'll just let him share those directly. So we have 6 credential types and 1 verifiable data structure, which is a looser definition. And so we want to have these for privacy preserving proofs of personhood, community membership, etc., keeping that context in mind. So in the bootstrapping document, Drummond and others, I'm not sure who to give credit to, talked about 4 categories. So we have the edge credentials. These are things that actually create the edges in the trust graph. And the 2 types there are membership credentials, establishing that you belong to a particular VTC or VTN. And when I say you also, I mean just any entity. So these also could be agents or other communities, etc. And then the verifiable relationship credential, which was the foundational peer-to-peer credential. Now, with the bootstrapping, we need invitation credentials. So this is something new that's been added, authorizing onboarding. And then the other category is what we call like annotation credentials, perhaps. So these are things that do not create graph structure, but add detail to an edge. So a persona to say, as a reminder, we're using these pairwise private relationship DIDs to identify relationships as a primary mechanism. But if you want to link a public or semi-public persona to a relationship, you can do it with reputation. An endorsement endorses a skill, a reputation, and then witness. So this could be, for example, an authorized agent of the community witnessing formation of relationships. For example, at the upcoming Linux member summit, that could be an example of maybe they add a witness to relationships that are formed there. That could help with trust. And the verifiable data structure is the R card. So this is not a credential per se, but is something verifiable that provides additional human readable kind of input, just like a business card. So this is just a little visual taxonomy of that. It's basically exactly just what I described, describing these four categories and just a visual version. Um, these annotation, invitation, and edge credentials do not show up in the spec formally. They're just something to help understand what we're talking about. So we are still talking about a higher level decentralized trust graph credential format, base format, and then we have these other formats underneath. That's the intent. One thing to talk about that's come up, Alberto and I are also working on an implementation of a human-to-human, in-person relationship exchange built on top of the Open Wallet Foundation Bifold project. And that is still using a verifiable credential version 1. So this brings up a question about version support in the standard. So the primary standard will be version 2.0. So that's a must support. And then, we want to have a path where legacy systems can generate credentials and participate, but with a pathway to moving towards V2 in time. So that's basically what this describes here. And you may have thoughts on this. Certainly something can be talked about, but there's plenty of systems out there that are still on version 1 that are in wide use. And how will those be able to participate in this new ecosystem? So it talks just about a couple properties in particular that are different, and mostly dates. I wasn't a part of those discussions. I don't know why they made these breaking changes with dates, but there you are. And there are also some proof type considerations there. So I'll just kind of skip by that. You can see it's very simple examples of what a version 2 credential would look like and a version 1. It's just, again, a very slight property name difference based on those standards. The base credential, again, this is very similar to before. This is something for discussion. It came up, where should the context for the DTG live? And maybe it makes sense not to be on firstperson.network, maybe a part of the decentralized trust graph infrastructure, through the Linux Foundation. So that's sort of TBD, but you get the idea. We need to define some context. We have the type, must include verifiable credential, DTG credential, and anything, and then exactly one subtype. So again, we're keeping these very simple. This has been iterated for simplicity. So the issuer, the valid from until credential subject, and the ID is the did of the subject. So often the relationship did, but sometimes a membership did or a community did. And then the proof, obviously. So this is all standard VC structure. And again, you can see it's very simple. Issuer, valid from, date, and then who it's issued to. That's the core. And then as we get into this, I'll just quickly go through this. Again, this should be straightforward based on the bootstrapping conversation last time. So establishes a node in the graph defining membership in a VTC or VTN. And again, the format is all the same. What's different is who the issuer is and who it's issued to. So in this case, the community is issuing it to the membership did, MDID. And this is also something to flag for discussion. The bootstrapping document talks about MDIDs and about reuse of MDIDs in some cases. And just want to flag that one of the privacy and risk reduction principles was to have pairwise private relationship DIDs. But the bootstrapping will certainly require some flex there, but we might want to look carefully at that to make sure that the purpose is clear and the risk is minimized. So that's the membership credential. A relationship credential is a peer-to-peer credential between two nodes. Again, basically exactly the same format. What's different is the did of the issuer and the recipient or target party. Um, there's just some notes on these relationship dids. So, I develop I select a relationship did for how I want you to relate to me and vice versa. And so both of these are, kind of unilaterally unique to describe the relationship. That's currently a part of these pairwise private relationship dids. There's going to be this is just again sort of like a placeholder. We're going to need some discussion about zero knowledge proof requirements, and I don't think we've gone deep enough into that yet, or maybe there's a subgroup I'm not as familiar with. I know there's been conversations going on about this, so we'll need to get that more specific as needed to support the zero knowledge system. That's part of that. Okay, here's a new one, the invitation credential. And so just in the bootstrapping document, when you're being invited to participate, you need a way to indicate that invitation. So that's authorizes a prospective member to join a VTC or VTN. And in the bootstrapping process, certain folks are able to issue those at certain stages of that process. Um, and again, it's the issuer and the recipient are the DIDs are what you would expect for that type of credential. One thing that comes up again, something else I want to flag is about roles and access control and like what permissions, etc. So I think we've had conversations where these are maintained in a trust registry, so that they're up to date. Maybe revocations can be managed. But do we want, when you're invited, do you want it to be in the invitation credential? What role, you are being authorized for? So you could consider this a kind of endorsement credential, perhaps. Or endorsement information, let's say, endorsement information. And so is that live only in the trust registry, or is it verifiable in the invitation itself or elsewhere in the credentials themselves? So that's something, I think, an open question. The annotation credentials, these did not change from the last version. I believe pretty much everything is the same. A persona is to link a semi-public or public persona. So your persona did, you say you sort of expose yourself as a particular persona, and you then issue your persona credential to the counterparty's RDID, usually. Might be an MDID. The endorsement credential, this is just a very loose placeholder that we want some kinds of endorsements, where at this point we've said the structure and the fields are determined by community policy, but it has some endorsement object that gives detail on the nature of the endorsement. So that's again an annotation. The witness credential, this is a third-party attestation that an edge was established under certain conditions. So as I said, the example of, let's say you're at a conference and there's some device on the local network that witnesses relationship formation in that context and can say, yes, indeed, these folks met or established their relationship credentials in this particular context. So that might be something that is helpful for building trust in some ways. The R card, again, is just like a business card, but updated for more general purpose. And currently envisioning that it's basically an expansion of a J card kind of format where you provide what's in a V card, just in a JSON format. So additional notes, many of you came, here curious or focused on the importance of personhood credentials. So just to state it clearly that a personhood credential is a membership credential issued by a VTC who has specific governance related to enforcing personhood. So that's really it. It's you just need to know which community is, what their practices are, and I'm sure there'll be some ecosystem forming of different personhood credential providers. So making that clear. Talk about trust registries. Right now this is saying that they're the authoritative source for roles, maybe handle revocations, mapping DIDs to policies, etc. Um, there are also identity verification credentials, which are intended to, they're not a specific subtype here, at least in this draft version. So it's basically any kind of VC satisfying a particular community's identity proofing requirements. So that's up to each community as to what would oh, a hand is raised here. Drummond, do you want to say something?
It was just to clarify. We tried to do that in the glossary. Where the reason it's not specified is because these are credentials that identity verification providers can issue today. When I worked at Gen, we were working with several vendors that do that, and we're issuing them as starting to issue them as verifiable credentials. So it's something we needed to reference as something that a verifiable trust community could say, hey, in our policies, for a new member to be invited, we want them to go to have an IDVC. But it's not something we could potentially, if there's enough interest, say, publish and say, well, here's a recommended, sort of generic identity verification credential, but it's not it's not core to what we're doing at DTC. I mean, in the DTG working group and to building the trust graphs. It's something that many communities may need. So I just wanted to clarify the difference between that and the DTG credentials that Brendan is going over. So there isn't confusion because yeah, just the DTG credentials are how you prove you are, you have certain trust relationships where an IDVC credential is actually issued to say, well, I can prove I have literally a certain name, a certain, address, a certain citizenship, other things that are in the class of sort of standard verifiable credentials. I just wanted to make that clear to everyone. We try to make that clear in the glossary. If it's not clear enough, let's please improve it. That's all, Brendan.
Thanks. I think I see. Is there someone else with a raised hand as well?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
hard to see sometimes, as Drummond has reminded me countless times. So when we're dealing with identity verification credentials, it is important to put in the credential a level of assurance attribute because the, even though you're punting to whoever's creating identity verification, there are schemes and level schemes set up to tier different levels of assurance based on the reader evidence used to prove that you are a particular identity.
and to build on what Scott's point, the identity proofing rules for issuing that and qualifying identity verification providers that actually can be trusted to apply those rules. That's all the classic kind of thing that a verifiable trust community has to govern, right? And might we publish a implementation guide or recommendations about doing that? Yes, but that falls on governs of a trust community versus what we're here to specify how they all need to work and interoperate. Anyway, that's all I
Okay.
had.
Great. So I'm basically, this is the end of the document. So just another call out about zero knowledge and selective disclosure importance. Right now, this is format agnostic. But again, I think these conversations still need to be had and a reminder about the privacy considerations about did reuse generally and to maybe take a look at the MDIDs and the bootstrapping flow and make sure things are safe there. So that's it. I also just, Jeff, did you want to add anything related to your review?
Most of it is in the PR that I created, so I think we'll probably be okay with that, but I'll wait for you to look at that. If you can just scroll up to section 2 for 1 second, because Drummond had a question in the spec chat earlier when we were talking about this, and he sort of alluded to it. just now. So yeah, if you go up to scroll down a tiny bit, there's a sort of a note there under, or maybe it's section 3. Shoot, where am I? Yeah, right there, right there. Scroll back up a bit where you had legacy systems. Um, right there where you have that sort of design intent legacy IDVPs to issue VMCs. I changed that, Drummond, to issue IDVCs because we were looking at this as if it was an outside party like Verif or something like that, and so it didn't make sense to say that they would be issuing VMCs. They're not.
Ah,
You
okay.
see what I
I
mean?
get. I saw the comment I saw the thread just before I got on the call here. You know, I'm out in the West Coast. We're the last ones to wake up in the world. So I thought it was the other way around. And something that should be a VMC, you were talking at IDVC. No, you're right. An IDVC
Okay,
would not issue a VMC. They would issue an IDVC to the MDID in that you then the invitation credential references, right?
right,
So that's in the bootstrapping document. We try and make it clear. The member says, "Oh yeah, they they get an invitation. They go, oh, I want to be a member. Oh, this particular community requires me to have an IDVC credential." So I take the invitation. This is, I think quite an elegant process. The community can say, we use these 3 IDVCs. Um, any of them provide a service that if you show up with an invitation to join our community, they will run you through their IDVC, their identity proofing process. And if everything works, they'll issue the IDVC to your MDID. Now the member can, or the prospective member can take that IDVC credential and the invitation and go to the verifiable trust agent in a fully automated process at that point and say, here you go. I've got an invitation from a community member. Maybe I have other, we talk about, I need 2 other relationships with community members, and I have an IDVC credential issued to the same MDID. Give those proofs to the verifiable trust agent. It checks everything against the trust registry and says, yep, you qualify. Here's your verifiable membership credential. That was the idea. And I'm just pointing out you're running this, but Jonathan's got his hand up too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is part of the same question or something separate. I'm still not totally sure why the membership credential is different from the relationship credential of sort of why is it different to be a member of an organization versus have a relationship with an organization? Do you still have that two-way sort of thing? Like, if Brendan wants to add me to the membership of the group, people I hate, is it a two-way relationship thing or not? I don't know if that's to be discussed here or if that's something to take offline.
I think it's I think it's a very, very legitimate question. I'm happy to provide the sort of the core rationale, which is the key difference between the VRC, the verified relationship, and the VMC, the membership, is that any 2 nodes, any place, can form a relationship. That is a direct peer-to-peer. No one imposes rules on you doing that with anyone else anywhere in any community or someone who's not, right? I can invite Scott. Let's say I don't have any other relationship with him. I meet him at a conference and just go, Scott, I just want a connection with you. We have a relationship. Okay. Then it's a separate thing for for me to say, hey, Scott, there's this great group, the Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group at Trust Over AP. I really want to invite you to be a member, and then I could issue him an invitation credential to do that, but he can't join that group unless he is able to then meet the membership requirements of that group, whatever it is, right? I help him start that process. I have a relationship with him, but the membership credential is what proves membership in a VTC, or it's important to say membership of a VTC and a VTN, a verifiable trust network, so it scales. But that's what the membership credentials do, is they prove that you are a member of a trust community, or a trust community is a member of a verifiable trust network. But relationships just prove you have a relationship. So I'll stop there and say, is that part clear, Jonathan?
I think I need to think more about it. I understand that there are like extra steps to creating that relationship that you're talking about, and that seems very sensible. That, some relationships are casual. We met at a conference, let's go. Other relationships might be transactional, like I've purchased a membership in a group. Then there could be relationships where you have to jump through a lot of hurdles. I might be projecting downstream into sort of a consumer adoption if they're not in the middle of all of this. But I kind of foresee, okay, well, your government ID is an IDVC, but your membership in this group is a membership credential, but your relationship with somebody is this, and then does your local library need to set everything up to create a membership credential server in order for you to represent your library that you're allowed in the library? And it feels like a lot instinctively, but I don't want to rat hole the whole meeting on it. But that's what I'm a little nervous about, is like, are these truly permanently foundationally different objects that need to be different all the way down at the bottom? Or are these things we're talking about these steps you have to go through in order to get a relationship and what decorations might hang on to it?
So Jeff's got his hand up next. I put my hand up to provide a short response, but go ahead, Jeff.
Well, why don't you go ahead, Drummond, then I'll follow up.
Okay, my direct answer is they are the latter, Jonathan. They are the fundamental building blocks, the core characteristics of these credentials, which we would be explaining in the spec. We'll talk about that in a minute. Are these fundamental building blocks whose characteristics are, graph related properties that are universal for all of the graphs. So they are way over on that end of the spectrum. And then all of the governance of those credentials by specific communities, like the library saying, hey, this is what it takes if you want a membership credential for us. Or literally at the other end, way down at this end of the spectrum, hey, I just created a chat group, right? And Jonathan, I want you to join the chat group, right? It's like, whoa, that's way simple. Far other end of the spectrum, oh, we're a country. Country is a verifiable trust community, right? Of grand scale. You want to be a member of our country. Let's not talk about the country I'm in right now. Here's all of what you have to go through to obtain citizenship, right? So it's just this massive spectrum of what a membership credential means. It's a very, very precise graph-based decision description of what membership is. It's literally, versus it comes down to UML, which we will talk about in the spec. That's all I was going to say, because you're right. There's a lot to explain about these fundamental building blocks to make sure that communities are using them right. Okay, back over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, real quick, when I was listening to Jonathan, I was just having the thought, what's to stop, or what kind of guardrails are in place to stop a group from just issuing a membership credential to someone that doesn't want one? I know that there's this flow where the guy shows up with an invitation credential and whatnot, but what's to stop, like Linux kernel saying, issuing a membership to you or me, even though we don't want to be members of that? Because if they have a DID that one of us control, then they could just issue the membership credential to that DID, and then what do I do there? It looks like I'm a member of something I'm not.
So one thing about verifiable credentials, I'll just quickly answer this, is someone can offer you a credential, you never need to take it, right? And they can't, they could say you're a member, right? They can lie to someone, but if someone then checks the other half of that, that's the thing about relationships. There are always two parts. Someone comes to you and says, Jeff, you remember that community? You can go, no, and you cannot produce, if you don't produce a proof that, if they're saying, oh, we have, well, first of all, they wouldn't have your MDID because you're not a member of the community. So how would they get that, right? That MDID is something that you and the community have to agree is if you've never given them an MDID, they don't have an MDID for you, right? So it's really, I don't know how they would turn around and say they could make another representation you're a member of that community, but there's no proof that you're providing that anyone else could rely on. Oh, yeah, I don't see any signature from Jeff on any MDID that the community also says is your MDID. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just thinking more that I guess we're getting into the details of the DIDs now, so maybe it's not worth getting too far into it. But I guess, yeah, um, it sounds like we have to specify more clearly what MDIDs are versus RDIDs versus PDIDs and everything like that. That's something that's, I guess, going to be written in the credential itself or something.
Well, also the specs will make that clear. There's great discussion about, I mean, Scott, for instance, brings up, okay, there's an attack surface right there. Invitations could be used as phishing attempts. 100% that will
Yeah.
happen. That's the kind of risk that we will need to mitigate. The nice thing is, I'm really, there are a bunch of cool ways that you can apply the trust graph and a verifiable trust network to block those phishing attempts in a way that folks never have to the end user is just all that protection's built in. Okay, we have about 9 minutes left, and this is the discussion we wanted to start. Certainly, we'll continue. Obviously, now that everyone's seen this in the discussions on the repos. Um, uh, Actually, before Jonathan goes, let me just say, Brendan, there was a suggestion in the Psychoshen made a suggestion in the Discord yesterday. Let's start a new discussion about VO3. Are you willing to take an action item to do that, Brendan or Jeff, either one? And so then
For sure.
we can then continue these discussions and the questions Jonathan and others are asking in that thread. And that'll tee up things that then we want to put into the spec. Okay, we have two hands up, Jonathan first, and then Margaret. I mean, Margie.
Yeah. So
Jonathan.
maybe two suggestions in response to this really good conversation. One is the implications of this is that an organization is a specific elevated type of entity in the network. And it could be really useful to spend time writing out exactly what that means. What is an organization? What is not an organization? Is a chat group of three people an organization? Who gets to define themselves as one? And all these issues around membership. So I think that could be a useful follow-up document. The other thing, because some of these things around phishing and brigading and so forth are coming up, looping back to the safety part of this would be a very strong encouragement to consult in deep with women and traditionally marginalized groups for potential avenues of harm. Having been at Google when they launched Buzz and didn't do that, there are a lot of ways for horribleness to emerge from things like you can issue a membership credential that somebody doesn't want, that we should dig in a lot more on.
100%. Jonathan, you're going to get drafted in. Talk about uninvited memberships. You're going to get drafted into the risk assessment harms prevention.
Happy to.
All right. Margie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just I'm wondering if the essence of this concern is really just that the burden of proof is on the person who doesn't want membership. So if it's this imbalance of power where if I get invited to a thing I don't want to be a part of, but now it's up to me to prove that I'm not a part of this thing, which is
Absolutely excellent. I think Scott, there's a perfect topic. I think my reaction is, oh, there are a bunch of good ways to protect against that, but it's incumbent on us introducing these tools. This is literally what Scott was explaining. We introduce these tools. This is a way they could be used for harm. It's a risk that we need to mitigate against. We are incumbent to provide guidance. Here's how you do it. So 100% love that. All right. First, I want to thank Brendan and Jeff and the other contributors This is exactly where I was hoping we would get to in terms of maturing our proposals around the around the credentials, DTG credentials. This is why in addition to risk and harms, we said this is the first spec we need. So we just have 5 minutes left. If we've recorded an action item for Brendan Jeff to start that discussion in the credentials repo, then we will post that once we have that link. We'll put it in the notes. We'll put it in the Discord. So I want to encourage everyone, please study that, ask your other questions, and here's why. I will share my screen again, and we'll get back to the final, and I'll go back here to our doc. Our last agenda item is, okay, what do we want to get accomplished in this quarter? Oh, this is fantastic. Thank you, Martina. She's taking fantastic notes. That's my co-chair, Martina Kolopatinos. Sorry, I'm still working on her last name. Anyway, thank you, Martina. So I'm tossing it out there for quick feedback. I'm proposing we have 3 deliverables we want to concentrate on for this in Q1, right? Keep us going. We're at a fast start. Let's keep going. One is, and this is pretty easy. It's to basically move our glossary into a formal concept and terminology working group format, and have it as a referenceable document. So basically, it moves into GitHub, makes it a spec up T document, and now we can sit there every time we need a new term or we need to adjust the definition. We're doing a PR against that, so it becomes and we decide we can publish it independently as one of our deliverables, or we can just simply include it in our other specs. Second one is, let's see if this quarter we can not only have a DTG credentials working draft, but we go through, and each time you version a working draft, it just is another working draft, 01, 02, 03, whatever. Can we this quarter get it to the point where it's recommended trust RP, it's an implementer's draft. It's the stage before you do a public review to say, hey, any other comments? But we actually are, building against it. LKMV is one top, but whoever is building against it, we have their implementation feedback. What I mean is, can we get there by the end of the quarter? Get that feedback over, the following quarter, so that we can, move towards a fully complete spec. The third thing, and last one I'll point out, is these now will let us get very granular about the zero knowledge proof requirements we have against the graph. And Brendan, you already included some notes about that, and what I think we need to do there to support the ZKP work is come up with a requirements doc around that, where we can be very, very specific. These are the standards that are proofs we need to prove. That way we can test. It may or may not be a final deliverable, but if we have a doc against that, we can then literally test the different ZKP options that are being discussed. So I'm just going to stop there. We have 1 minute left. Any feedback on that? Is there something we're missing there? Feel free to suggest something else, but would this be, a good set of objectives to have in this first quarter? Looks like everyone's sort of like, oh, okay. Basic head nodding. Go ahead, Riza. You're on mute.
Unmuting myself. There we go. Yeah, I think a goal would be to get a set maybe of diagrams that can explain this to a layperson quickly. There's a lot of terminology flying around. I definitely would love it if, for the Linux developer audience that you'll be addressing in March, for them to come away with a at least a good understanding of what the the collection of credentials that we're talking about and how they interrelate. And so pictures speak louder than words. I don't know, but I think it's important to get this first over to a developer audience before we get it over to, the average person in the street. But you've got a big developer audience you'll be addressing in March, and yeah, I think I, a lot of us are struggling to keep all of the credentials in our head and visualize how they work.
100%. Love that suggestion. And knowing that
Mhm.
that conference March 5th, that gives us a nice deadline to have that. Um,
Right.
I need to do a high level, simple description of this for an audience tomorrow morning, actually. Looking forward to that. So yeah, that's a great suggestion. I know we're at time now. I've just added that to the list. So thank you, everyone. We will next week start diving into, all right, what is the, well, first of all, we'll be discussing all the questions that come out of your review and the discussions of the of O3, and then we'll start diving into the process of how we're going to move these specs forward. So I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. I will save a version of the chat here because there's so many. Oh, wow, 16 messages since I last looked at it. Um, I love this group. Thank you all so much, and we will be seeing you next week. Awesome. Bye, all.